Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, in the fall, a lot of times in our farm, we're thinking about setting ourselves up for next year, and that comes down to fertility and a number of other things. We're going to get into one of those fertility topics with a discussion on fertilizing with sulfur.
We'll also talk today about nitrogen. So we're getting all through this fertilizer thing today, but nitrogen and sulfur are both incredibly important to your crop, and we find that in some cases they're under-fertilized, but in many cases, things like nitrogen are over-fertilized. We'll explain on today's show.
One thing you always have too much of is weeds. We'll show you how to stop one of those tough weeds during our Weed of the Week segment. But first, here's today's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
Fall is the best time to spray your lawn, so during our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about that.
Well, when you think about it with your lawn, if you're going to be spraying for weeds, you have some plants around there that you don't want to harm. It may be flowers, it may be trees, it may be your garden. There's always things to watch out for. The great thing about fall is the leaves are dropping off the trees, your garden is done, and your flowers are done as well. So it's a great time to get out and spray those weeds because most of the concerns that you have about any kind of drift or off-target spray application are really minimal right now.
Here's one of the most important things you need to understand as well. When you spray in the fall, killing small weeds is much easier than killing big weeds. So a lot of times in the fall you say, well, my weeds have kind of died back. It's not that big a deal. I'll wait till spring. No, now is the time to get them because not only do you kill the weed now or at least burn it back pretty good, if that happens to be a perennial or biennial weed, you're also really going to injure it with winter kill. So if you damage the plant and maybe let's say you didn't completely kill it in the fall, but you damage it enough, maybe the winter finishes it off. So this is the best time to spray, not only because like Darren said, I'm not gonna kill my flowers or trees around me, but also because I can kill small weeds, I can damage them going into the winter. This is the best time to do it. And with products like 2,4-D, they leave some residual also. So we really want you to get out and spray your lawns right now.
Well, when you think about the weeds and the grass in your yard, right now in the fall, they're storing up water, they're storing up energy so they can really accelerate their growth in the spring. If we can wipe those weeds out, we not only stop them from competing for water and nutrients right now, but we also in the spring allow our crop or our grass in this case to get ahead of all those weeds. And the best weed control possible is getting a good crop canopy. So if we've got a really nice thick lawn established and it gets up, we really aren't going to have too many weed problems after that. So getting that weed control done now may eliminate the need for weed control next year if we did a great job today.
So here's what we want you to do. In most cases, we just want you to go out with the highest labeled rate of 2,4-D. Now, as soon as I say 2,4-D, some people ridiculously associate that with Agent Orange. We've been hearing about that some in the news. You may have heard about that, about the new Enlist trait that they're talking about for soybeans and everything, and oh, we don't want Agent Orange anymore. Come on, that's not Agent Orange. Yes, 2,4-D was one of the components of Agent Orange. In fact, it was 50% of Agent Orange. But guess what? That wasn't the thing that caused any problems in there. In fact, the other main component, 2,4,5-T, was not a big problem either. Both of those are relatively safe to humans. You know what the problem was? And I'm telling you this just so you have ammunition to talk to other people about this when they say, oh, don't spray 2,4-D in your lawn, it's harmful. No, it's not. Get real. The problem with the Agent Orange back then was the 2,4,5-T used in the Agent Orange was contaminated with dioxin. Okay, had it not been contaminated, you wouldn't have seen any deaths with Agent Orange or any problems with Agent Orange. In fact, if you look at the LD50 for 2,4-D amine, it's much safer than even caffeine is. Okay, the LD50 for amine is 1,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. The LD50 for caffeine is 200 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. In other words, 2,4-D amine is 5 times as safe for you as caffeine. Now that doesn't mean take a bath in it. We want you to use personal protective equipment and all that kind of thing, but just understand 2,4-D is not going to kill you.
All right, well the big thing is we want to control weeds. We want to do it safely for you, your children, and your pets. We definitely want to let all that stuff dry before we let anything out into the yard. So what I'll do at my own house, I've got little kids, I've got a dog that wants to be out in the yard all the time. I'll just make a point of, you know what, the dog's going to stay in the house tonight. We're going to take him for a walk around the neighborhood instead of just letting him out in our yard. And that's all I do. That's really my precaution. And instead of letting the kids play in the backyard, we'll go to the park that day, or we'll go out camping or something else. So we're away from the yard for a few hours. We'll leave everything just as it is. There's no problem with the weeds dying or anything like that out there. That's not dangerous for anybody. So just get your yard sprayed on a day where, you know, the kids and the pets aren't necessarily going to be in the yard. The same thing we'd advise farmers that have cattle spraying their pastures. Spray the pasture, have the cattle in another part of the pasture, get your spraying done, and then, you know, whatever, the next day or something, it's safe to let them back in.
Well, once again, now is the time to spray your lawn, get it done this fall, and you should have a lot cleaner and greener lawn next spring.
One of the things that you may see in your yard or in your crops is our weed of the week. I'll show you how to control it coming up later in the show.
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans will provide tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate and will be built on the Genuity Roundup Ready to Yield trait. See them in action at extendfollowafield.com.
There's no clock on this job, just the timeless hands of intuition and effort, ticking from within. An endless cadence of committed work, from the passing of Mother Nature's final frost to the hanging dew at harvest. Around here, wheels are always turning, and watches need no winding, because success never rests.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandako Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving and rocks and has contour conformity equaling zero downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted Coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandako Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandako Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
The world of farming is changing. Titan Machinery and Case IH are here to make sure you're ready. The demands on agriculture keep growing. The challenge for producers is to continue to keep pace. To be successful, you'll need equipment that can get the most out of every inch of land, innovations that help you work faster, and advice from people who know your field as well as they know your equipment. Don't get left behind. Be ready with Case IH and Titan Machinery. Better solutions.
Welcome to the 30-second tour of your local Poet plant. Local producers sell us tons of their grain. We grind it, mix it with water and special enzymes. The result is fermented, distilled, and dehydrated until it's 200 proof alcohol. Corn oil is extracted, and protein and nutrients are condensed, dried, and turned into animal feed, bringing our tour to an end with high-protein feed and cleaner-burning high-octane fuel. Visit poet.com to learn more.
A proven herbicide for decades, dicamba can provide burn-down residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
One nutrient that you may or may not have been thinking about lately on your farm is sulfur. And the reason why this has gotten so much more popular in the last few years to talk about is, number one, we don't have nearly the air pollution that we used to. Clean air means you've got to fertilize with sulfur because that sulfur isn't falling from the sky anymore. And the other thing is, with higher yields in any crop, it's not just corn and the grass crops, but all crops, even soybeans, they need a fair amount of sulfur. So if you're going to raise more crop and you have less air pollution, you've got to apply sulfur to your farm if you want top yields.
Well, here's the other thing too. We oftentimes talk about nutrients that are going to stay in your soil, like phosphorus, potassium. They pretty much stay where they're put in most soils.
Until you use them up.
Yeah, until you use them up. Sulfur is one that can actually leach. Now that means that sulfur can move down through the soil profile with water. So especially if you have lighter soils, this is a real concern. But really in any soil, it can move. Just kind of like nitrogen does. So we want to be cautious when we're talking about sulfur. It's going to be one of those nutrients we need to apply pretty much every year to about every crop we're going to raise. We're going to need some level of sulfur, and we need to do good soil testing to monitor how much is out there. And then we also need to think about how much that crop's going to remove and how much we need to apply each season.
Okay, one other thing that Darren hasn't mentioned yet is you've got some free sulfur in your soil that comes available every year. Here's how. When organic matter breaks down through the process of mineralization, it's going to release some sulfur for you. So the numbers would say 2 to 3 pounds of sulfur for every 1% of organic matter. So if I've got 5% organic matter soil, I'm going to get 10 to 15 pounds of sulfur for free every year. That's a good deal. And you've got to factor that in when you start looking at how much do I already have available, how much do I really need. If I've got 10 or 15 pounds coming available, and let's say the crop I'm raising only needs 8 pounds, I'm probably in pretty good shape, so I might not have to apply sulfur every year. This is why it's so important to understand soil tests, and unfortunately a lot of people, even a lot of people making soil recommendations, fertility recommendations, don't realize, oh yeah, organic matter has sulfur that's going to come available for your crop. So we're just trying to tell you, get smarter on this fertility thing, and it might save you a bunch of money on your farm.
All right, well, let's talk about that education a little bit. I am really happy that every farmer I talk to completely understands my crop needs N, P, and K. I have to have good amounts of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, or I'm not going to have a decent crop. What we kind of forget, though, when we focus on those big three things, is there's a lot of other nutrients out there, whether it's something like sulfur or calcium or magnesium, secondary nutrients, or even micronutrients. So we have to look at those other things as well. Now, when we get into a year like this year where fertilizer prices are pretty high, crop prices have come down quite a bit, I know there's a tendency for people, and I know we talk about it on our own farm too, is, man, I don't know if I can afford to put on the full shot of fertilizer. I may need to trim it back a little bit this year in order to maintain some profitability on my farm. When I look at some of these nutrients, like a sulfur, that we really don't need all that much, I just don't want to short myself on things that, you know, it's not that expensive to meet my sulfur needs already. As Brian was mentioning, we've got quite a bit of sulfur that does come for free in our soils. Maybe we only need to be applying 10 pounds or 20 pounds. You could get that kind of for free, like in a product like ammonium sulfate, for example, or ammonium thiosulfate.
Well, it's not really for free because it's going to cost more to go that way than to apply straight nitrogen. But here's his point.
There is some sulfur in some of the fertilizers you may consider using.
Right, absolutely. And there are a lot of different ways you can get that sulfur out there. It could be ammonium sulfate. It could be gypsum. It could be ammonium thiosulfate. It could be manure. There are lots of products that have some level of sulfur in there, so you got to take a look at that. And then also keep in mind, you know, we talk a lot about banding fertilizer and it's much more efficient. Well, that's for P and K and zinc, the things that don't move in soil. When we're talking about nitrogen and sulfur, they move enough in soil with water that banding doesn't give you the same efficiency over broadcasting than it does.
There's nothing wrong with banding. Don't think we're saying that.
The point is, you can put this sulfur on just about any way you want, and as long as you have some rainfall, you're going to move that down into the root zone.
Okay, so for example, maybe you're doing your burn down application in the spring. I know a lot of guys who like to add some sulfur into the burn down application because it heats it up.
Yeah.
So you get a little bit better weed control.
Hey, one other thing I was just thinking about is we apply a bunch of lime on our farm just about every year. Guess what? The lime we use has some sulfur in there too. So make sure you're looking at all the forms of sulfur, because you don't need to invest a bunch of money in a sulfur application when you've already put it on, maybe even inadvertently, on your farm.
Well, there's certainly a lot of functions that sulfur serves in the plant. It is absolutely critical that your crop has enough sulfur. The other thing that's critical for a successful crop is getting great weed control. We'll show you how to stop a very tough perennial weed, and today's Weed of the Week coming up later in the show.
How will you secure your farm for the future? The Quasar Chopping Cornhead from Capello USA will help. Our design is focused on efficiency, longevity, and reducing harvest loss, making the Quasar the corn harvest solution to bring your farm forward. With hundreds of units ready for immediate delivery, secure your farm's future today. Do it for your farm, do it for them. Order now. Capello USA, Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
This year's projected U.S. soybean yield will lose over $500 million per point in shrink. Eliminate shrink in your bin. Store grain without lowering moisture content with the AgriDry Bullseye Temperature and Moisture Controller. The Bullseye monitors air temperature and relative humidity, allowing your fans to utilize the weather's natural condition to maintain your grain at market moisture. Fan run times drastically decrease along with the cost of over-drying. Eliminate shrink today. Call now.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
I wish I could apply all the PK and micronutrients this crop needs at planting.
You can. When your soils are not excessively nutrient deficient, you can apply a whole season of PK and micronutrients when you plant and get top yields at harvest. AgroLiquid's exceptional nutrient compatibility and superior efficiency allows you to prescription apply everything your crop needs safely and conveniently. Research proves it. For more info, go to agroliquid.com.
Looking to maximize yield? Kwik-Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Kwik-Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Kwik-Roots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Kwik-Roots today.
All right, I got to tell you a little story here. We're talking about nitrogen next. And we had some issues on our farm. This is back 10, 15 years ago when Darren and my dad and I
thought you were going to blame it on me. When Darren did, I was like, wait a second, why are you going to dump this all on me?
No, this is a joint deal where every year we'd get to the end of the year and we'd say, boy, our crop looks so good, but we just didn't get the yield we wanted, especially with corn, but soybeans, other crops. And we said, well, what do we need to fix, like in corn? Well, I don't know. Well, what do you think? Well, I don't know exactly. Well, how about we put more nitrogen on? Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's put more nitrogen on. So we'd throw more nitrogen out there, and how far do you think that got us? It didn't get us anywhere. We started doing some plant tissue analysis because we had somebody advise us to do that. So we started doing plant tissue analysis every week during the growing season, just in one field that first year. And I just remember how embarrassed I felt when every single week our potassium, boron, and zinc came back, not just low, but deficient every single week. And every single week our nitrogen came out excessive. Okay, excessive on nitrogen is not good. That could potentially pollute our environment. It's a waste of money, and it's not making me money on the farm like I want it to. That's not a good thing. So what we're trying to tell you here is, yes, nitrogen is incredibly important, but it's certainly possible you may be over-applying it just like we were on our farm.
We get right back to taking good soil tests and checking out what you have in your field. The other thing is looking at how much does my crop actually need.
We were just talking a little bit ago about sulfur and how that comes out of the organic matter. There's a tremendous amount more for nitrogen that comes out of that organic matter. Here are the numbers. 20 to 30 pounds per acre of nitrogen is going to come available for free every year per percent of organic matter. Farming is often a generational thing, and we hear people talk all the time about how I want to leave my ground in better shape for my kids than when I got it. Well, one of the ways you can do that and give your kid all kinds of money is by building up that soil. If you increase your organic matter, let's say 2 or 3% over your farming career, and you leave that for your child, just think about having, if you had 3% more organic matter, that's 60 to 90 pounds of free nitrogen that basically for that kid's whole farming career, he's going to get for free every year. Hopefully he says thanks.
Well, hopefully he even understands it. And really talking about building up organic matter, it doesn't have to cost you a penny. You can do that just by making smart decisions on your farm, reducing tillage, maybe changing up your crop rotation to have high residue crops and crops that have lots of root mass. I mean, there are just simple things like that that you can do to get more nitrogen for free.
Okay, but let's talk about in the short term tie-up of nitrogen in things like corn residue. When we've got a high carbon crop and low nitrogen, then that nitrogen is going to get sucked up by the bacteria that are trying to break down the high carbon. So what happens is, for example, if I raise continuous corn, I will typically recommend that a farmer apply an additional 50 pounds of nitrogen. Now eventually that'll come available, okay, but it might be several years from now when it comes available in my crop, when that residue totally breaks down. But you've got to look at extra nitrogen in situations like that. You also have to look real hard at your soil test, not just the top 6 inches, but it's also important to test a little bit deeper, especially like in our area where we farm. it's relatively dry, and our nitrogen doesn't always leach down. In fact, very seldom does it leach down because we've got heavy soils and dry conditions. So I want to test not just the top 6 inches, I want to test the top 24 inches for nitrogen, because if I can get roots down there, I can suck up most of that nitrogen this coming year. Here's the most important thing we want you to know first. You've got to look at the cation exchange capacity level in your soil to figure out how much nitrogen your soil can hold at any one time. Take your CEC times 10, and that'll give you the number of pounds.
Let me make one last comment here as we close. With that CEC value, many of the guys raising 350 and 400 bushel corn in our country have very low CEC soil. So don't think, oh no, I only have a CEC of 8. I just can't raise big yields on my farm. That's not true at all. You definitely can. It just means you're going to have to do multiple applications of fertilizer so you don't lose any, so it costs you the least amount, and so your crop can do the best.
And of course, you've got to have the right balance of overall nutrients in your soil. Just like sulfur we were talking about earlier in the show, if you have the right level of sulfur, your nitrogen is used more efficiently too. Well, another way that nitrogen gets used more efficiently by your crop is if you don't have weeds. We'll talk about controlling our weed of the week coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Get ready to take control of weeds like never before. Enlist will build on the Roundup Ready system with new herbicide and trait technology, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm.
Our weed of the week is one of the first grass weeds that I can identify. It's bromegrass.
Okay, bromegrass is a perennial grass. It's got a membranous ligule, and because it's a perennial, usually you're going to find rhizomes below the ground, and also what looks like a W on the leaf on a lot of these leaves.
Or an M, depending on which way you want to hold it, if it's upside down or not. Yeah, I mean, that's what you look at. My oldest boy, his name starts with M, so he said, no, Dad, it's got an M on it. It's bromegrass. There's an M in the name, and it's on the leaf. That's how he remembers that one. Okay, that's cool, but it's a really tough one. A lot of times you'll see that in roadside ditches and right on the edges of fields, but since it is that creeping perennial with the rhizome system, it creeps out into your field. So if you're not doing a good job of either tillage or using high rates of Roundup along the edges of your field, bromegrass can creep in, and much like having a tree belt right next to your field with roots that go out into the field, that bromegrass can rob those outside few rows of crop of a lot of the nutrients that it needs and also the water that it needs. So bromegrass control is really important. Then if you get out into yards and you've got a perennial grass like bromegrass, it's a wide leaf, it grows faster than most of your yard grasses, like a Kentucky bluegrass, for example. It just looks terrible out in your yard. So you've got to get things under control before they become big problems.
Okay, but in your yard, there's really not much you can do. In a lot of cases, people will just kill off the entire lawn with an extremely high rate of Roundup, the highest labeled rate, low water volume, but high rate of Roundup, kill everything off and start fresh. Out in the field, it's kind of the same theory. We want to go with the highest labeled rate of Roundup, kill that, especially around the field borders. And here's the thing too, if you say, well, I'm going to wait till the crop comes up and then I'm going to kill stuff off, you're already too late. You've already lost yield. That bromegrass is going early in the spring, so as soon as you can, you want to get out there. And better yet, now is the time to hit it. Hit it in the fall. Get it under control now, get some winter kill on it, and then you'll have a lot better crop next year.
All right, when we talk about bromegrass, it is a perennial with lots of rhizomes. So the best thing you can do, spray it with a hard shot of Roundup, the full labeled rate of Roundup. That's the best thing you can do. If you do tillage, that's fine. You're going to stop it somewhat, but you are chopping those rhizomes up and you may see more shoots coming up next spring. So keep that in mind.
When you say that's fine, I don't like tillage for a control method at all. I'd go with the high rate of Roundup. If you want to do some plowing or something like that a week later than after you've sprayed the Roundup, that's fine, but I would avoid tillage. You'll get a better weed control if you spray the high rate of Roundup without tillage.
Well, that's all the time we have for our Weed of the Week, bromegrass, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
2015 is going to be interesting. Whether you're switching away from corn hybrid traits to save money, or you just want to use dry insecticide, we'll discuss an option you should consider in today's Iron Talk. Back in the day when the lion's share of new corn planters came with dry boxes for fertilizer or insecticide, there was no need for an alternative system. Many of the products that were being used were at close to 10 pounds per acre rates and could be applied accurately enough using a conventional pulley and chain metering system. Today, things are quite different. Most farmers have given up the dry insecticide boxes in favor of 3-bushel seed boxes or large central fill systems. Now, if you'd like to apply dry insecticide, chances are you're looking at adding a smart box system to your existing planter. Smart box systems have some big advantages over the old ways of applying insecticide. First, AMVAC, the company that markets SmartBox insecticides, has a program to help pay a portion of the cost of the system as you purchase SmartBox insecticides. Second, putting the insecticides in SmartBoxes eliminates much of your exposure risk to the insecticide you're using. Third, the SmartBox system has a more accurate system for metering low rates of insecticides. Some of the new ones are much more concentrated than the older insecticides that we used to use. Depending on the product you choose, you may be able to load new SmartBoxes on your planter just once in the morning and plant all day long. If you want to use dry insecticide this year, a SmartBox system is something you should check into. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandako Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving in rocks and has contour conformity equaling 0 downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted Coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandako Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandako Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
My data is mine, not mined.
Mine to share,
mine to keep.
It's mine when I want it.
Mine where I want it.
And only mine.
My data is mine to analyze.
Mine to put to work.
Mine to control.
It's mine.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
Working in agriculture over the past 3 decades, I saw a need for an accurate way to apply dry product to seed. That's where our Changing Times applicators come in. The CT applicator brush sifts powder into small particles, resulting in proper distribution. Quantities can be adjusted by the speed of the brush rotation. This allows for even and accurate distribution of product. Application at the time of planting can be used with any seed delivery system and saves farmers time, labor, and money. Remember, CT applicators for the changing times.
If you watch Ag PhD TV, you'll love the new Ag PhD radio show each weekday on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80. This is Darren Hefty. On the new Ag PhD radio program, we'll take live callers and provide the agronomic information and brotherly banter you've come to expect from Ag PhD. We'll feature a Back 40 segment where we talk to farmers and agronomists around the country to share what's going on with crop production. And it wouldn't be Ag PhD without addressing a pest of the day. Tune in to the Ag PhD radio show each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by NORWOOD Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Kwik-Till from NORWOOD Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Kwik-Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Kwik-Till can improve fields on your farm, call NORWOOD Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but for more agronomic information, we invite you to tune in to Sirius XM Channel 80. That's the Rural Radio channel at 2 p.m. Central each weekday for Ag PhD Radio.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show where we'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
American ethanol is made primarily from corn. Did you realize that the type of corn used for ethanol and livestock feed is much different than the sweet corn on your dinner table? For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.